He never finished his last cup of tea. The porcelain sat on the windowsill, untouched, the bergamot scent long gone, just like the life we'd carefully constructed over 27 years. My name is Margaret Ellis. I'm 64. And 4 days after Daniel's funeral, his 2 sons from his first marriage showed up at our front door with suitcases already half-packed in their minds. They didn't knock gently. They strode through the foyer like appraisers at an auction, eyes scanning crown molding, antique sideboards, the garden view Daniel and I had chosen together on our 5th anniversary. Connor, the elder, wore the same expensive watch his father once gifted him. Ethan trailed behind, quieter, but his gaze was just as sharp. Margaret, Connor began, voice clipped, professional, we should discuss Dad's arrangements. Arrangements. The word landed like a slap. Daniel wasn't even settled in the cemetery grass yet, and they were ready to carve up the rest of him. Ethan cleared his throat. We're not trying to be cruel, but time is a factor. The estate needs clarity. I stood in the hallway I'd painted sage green on a rainy Sunday, listening to 2 men who hadn't visited in 8 months explain that clarity meant me out. Connor opened a leather portfolio on the dining table, our dining table, and slid papers toward me. Dad's will is clear. The brownstone, the cottage in Maine, and the investment portfolio transfer directly to us. You're provided for, of course. A very generous life insurance payout, $250,000. Generous. The brownstone alone was worth over $2 million. The cottage had been our quiet escape for decades. And the portfolio? Daniel had built it slowly, brick by careful brick, while I taught 3rd grade and packed lunches. And the outstanding medical debt? I asked, voice steady. Connor didn't flinch. About $210,000 remains. As next of kin, that responsibility falls to you. I looked from one face to the other. They were calm. Practiced. The same calm they'd worn when Daniel first told them about the diagnosis, and they suddenly started calling every week. I said nothing. I simply nodded. They left believing the matter was settled. That evening I sat in Daniel's study, surrounded by the books he loved and the blanket he'd wrapped around me when the chemo made me shiver. I cried, not loud, not dramatic. Just the quiet kind of crying that comes when betrayal finally finds its shape. The next day I met with Daniel's old attorney, Julia Voss. She listened without interrupting, then spoke softly. There's another will, Margaret. Daniel executed it 7 weeks before he passed. He was lucid. He was certain. She showed me the document. Everything, the properties, the accounts, was mine. He'd also included a second folder, private investigator reports, bank transfers, screenshots of Connor's sports betting accounts, evidence of Ethan quietly siphoning client funds from the family investment firm. Daniel hadn't been blind. He'd been watching. And he'd prepared. He'd taken second mortgages on both properties, enough to bury them in debt. He'd moved the liquid assets into a trust only I could access. The final will his sons waved around. A forgery dated after he'd already changed everything. At the bottom of the folder lay a single sheet in Daniel's careful handwriting. My dearest Margaret. If you're reading this, they've shown their hand. I couldn't bear to watch you suffer while I was still breathing, so I kept silent. The real gift isn't the money. It's the choice. Do what brings you peace. I trust you completely. I closed the folder and breathed for what felt like the first time in weeks. 3 days later they invited me to dinner, ostensibly to clear the air. Connor's dining room gleamed with crystal and silver. They poured expensive wine and spoke of future plans, renovations, sales, vacations. I smiled politely and let them talk. When I casually mentioned finding an old bank key in Daniel's desk, Connor's fork paused. Ethan's smile flickered. The next morning we met at Julia's office. They arrived confident. Their attorney had already drafted quitclaim documents. Julia placed the real will, the mortgage statements, the investigator's report, and a stack of recorded conversations on the table. Connor laughed once, short, nervous. This is ridiculous. Fabricated. Julia didn't blink. The properties carry $3.1 million in combined liens. The trust holds $5.4 million in clean assets. You may take title, If you wish. Silence stretched like ice cracking. I spoke for the first time. You told me blood matters most. So take it. All of it. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. I signed the transfer deed. They signed too, quickly, eagerly, before their lawyer could fully explain the fine print. 6 weeks later the banks foreclosed. Connor's betting debts surfaced publicly, his brokerage license was revoked. Ethan faced criminal charges from furious clients. The brownstone sold at auction. The cottage followed. They tried to reach me once. I didn't answer. I kept the trust, sold what I didn't need, and bought a modest cedar-shingled house on a quiet inlet in Maine. No grand views, just the steady rhythm of tide and wind. I hung Daniel's favorite landscape painting above the fireplace. I started a small pottery studio in the garage. I walk the shore most mornings, pockets full of sea glass, heart strangely light. I wake up without dread. I sleep through the night. Daniel didn't just leave me resources. He left me the dignity of deciding my own ending. And the quietest revenge isn't loud. It's patient. It waits until greed overreaches, then simply steps aside and lets gravity finish the job. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, remember, silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's the most powerful weapon you'll ever hold. Your turn will come. When it does, choose yourself. Like this video if it resonated. Share it with someone who needs the reminder. Drop a comment, where are you watching from today? I read every single one. Subscribe to The Quiet Reckoning for more stories of strength disguised as stillness. Your next chapter might just be waiting in the shadows.